to another exciting episode of the PYRESWAP show. And today we did jump immediately into a new time slot without really letting people know until the last hour. I was supposed to make that announcement yesterday, but let's just say that we've been catching up to a lot of things in a good way. And of course, I appreciate everybody who's tuning in at this impromptu time. Something that I will be doing, by the way, is I will be making the Pyre bot in chat actually make a general chat kind of notey about the show starting, because I think that will help synchronize and synergize and harmonize everybody who's a big fan of the show on Discord, if that makes sense. I'm actually, if it's all the same to you, going to get my restream chat functioning. And I appreciate everybody who tuned in yesterday. I have great news. We do actually have the recording from the Wednesday show. So we will be able to upload it manually, and then I'll make that in another announcement. I'll make that in another announcement shortly, probably later today. And let me look at the chat. And there we go. Yeah, okay. This looks like I now have the chat and everything's good to go. So first of all, to address, I guess, like the most pressing and pertinent question that was asked during the few days that I was absent, and of course those days we also didn't have the PYRESWAP show running. The liquidity that was in the farm contracts of the Tomb Forks, this liquidity in fact remains locked during the entire duration of the farms. Like there is no owner-operator access to it, right? What happens is after the farms end, there is a cooldown period where effectively this is meant for the users to withdraw their liquidity and even single stake tokens or whatever from these contracts. So there is in fact a cooldown timer. We didn't even touch these things until after a year past their cooldown timer. So to be clear, 2Ohm Finance, which is probably the oldest one, or maybe DID is older as well. 2Ohm had a 3-month farm, which I think ended in April of 2022. So that farm wasn't accessible until July of 2022. And then we didn't touch any of those contracts until 2024. So 18 months went by after the cooldown period where everybody who was a farmer staker in 2Ohm could withdraw all their funds, to be clear. 3Ohm had a year-long farm, but again, after the year of 3-share farms, there's about 90 days where this is still a cooldown period where the users are meant to extract and withdraw. And 3Ohm, I think, was launched in February of 2022. So that means it wasn't until May of 2023 that those funds were able to be transplanted. So that was in May of 2023. I don't think that we really did anything. We did actually do redemption in Q1 of 2024. So that was still 8 months of the cooldown period. As far as Zohm, was I think maybe a little younger than 3Ohm. I'm not really sure, but again, same time. The first time we did this was explicitly in the interest of the user base. And in fact, we wrote an announcement about it where I kind of asked the user base what to do. This was actually pretty weird, but it was just because it was such a bizarre decision on my part, because the people that were still in those farm contracts were not the ones that were responding to the announcement. I hope that makes sense to you guys. Because me making that announcement and even being as transparent as I possibly could about us doing the transplant, we were doing it in the interest of the user base because the first DEX we were doing this from was called Redemption, and Redemption had turned off its user interface. For those of you who don't know, when a DEX turns off its user interface, it becomes incredibly unsafe to withdraw LP tokens. It becomes incredibly unsafe to withdraw liquidity because the transaction that most people use to get back their underlying tokens is actually two different transactions that I believe is bundled into a what is that called? it's a sequence transaction. I don't know. I feel like I'm missing this vocabulary word. But anyways, there's a website called rugdoc.io, which in fact makes that process safe by rebundling it into a single transaction. So this is what helps users reclaim tokens from a DEX that turns off its front end. So it was actually Rugdoc that I used to safely withdraw all user funds from redemption when we first did that, just to be 7,000% clear. We then moved all those funds onto PYRESWAP. And the reason we justified this is because those funds were literally doing nothing for the users while still being on redemption. In fact, redemption had reconfigured itself so that it was no longer burning tokens in the background at all. Rather, it was just siphoning fees and giving it directly to the owner-operator's wallet. And of course, for those of you who remember, that was Matrix money. So it wasn't until later, like first of all, that was something I announced, I think, in every single server. The user base, and I mean you guys that are watching this right now, I gave you guys the opportunity to vote on what I did, and you guys voted overwhelmingly in the direction of me doing it. Then based on the fact that Zeom at the time, for those of you who remember, Zeom was deployed in liquidity against USD coin. So Zeom, even though it was pegged to 1.3 ohm, it was deployed in liquidity against USDC. And this USDC happened to be the very same USDC that multi-chain compromised. So all of this USDC was in fact worth like 13 cents. So I asked the user base again if, while I'm transplanting the liquidity, should I replace the bad USDC with good USDC that is actually worth $1? The user base again voted that I make this autocratic decision to replace the multi-chain USDC with, I think it was layer 0 or Axelar or just a different version of USDC, and that we put it back onto the DEX in that pairing. We then later did this with all of the pancake swap liquidity and all of the spooky swap liquidity. The users in these farms, we have the ability to look at these contracts and see the history of their interaction. So the last time that we did this with the spooky swap liquidity, I was looking at the farm contracts transaction history. And before I did this, before I transplanted the liquidity, the last person to interact with that contract was 90 days prior, and it was somebody who was trying to deposit in the 3-share farm. Like, that's the one I remember. It was like 90 days before, and it was somebody trying to deposit. Like, now, this was over a year since the 3-share farm ended, and actually probably, yeah, about 18 months at least since the 3-share farm ended. So, if you're wondering why, like we weren't blasting this announcement when we did these things, it's because when we do these things, it's an opportunity for somebody who is our enemy to do something nefarious and interrupt the money as it's moving, because that kind of can, what it can do is it can make the liquidity as it gets repaired be the wrong ratio, if that makes sense. Like that was just something we wanted to do this quietly before we perhaps had enemies large enough that would attempt these things. Two, the users that are staked in these contracts do not listen to Discord announcements. It would have been the same effect of me going outside and screaming this to the neighborhood, because like the people that are listening to announcements, they're not staked in the Sharecoin farms anymore. Very jittery? Okay. But can you at least hear me, Fexer? I appreciate the feedback. Yeah, is it still at least audible? Okay. Jittery. Okay. Yeah, it's we'll definitely get that. We'll definitely make that. We'll troubleshoot that in a bit. And by the way, we do have the recording from yesterday, so we will be posting the recording yesterday as a manual upload. Anyways, yeah. So I'm hoping that this story at least answers a lot of questions about a lot of this stuff. We've never hidden it. We have never hidden about this. I still get to this day, like, I don't know, up to 5 DMs a month from people that are in fact like rising from the dead. And they're like, hey, I'm having trouble, unstaking from Grim Finance. Like, legitimately, there's a guy who was still in Grim Finance. Grim Finance was another like farm automator that literally they shut down. Like, Grim Finance shut down, so there's no UI on Grim. So it's now an obligation of mine to help people who are staked on Grim Finance unstake from Grim Finance without any UI, like using Phantom Scan, then take that liquidity and like unstake it from. Yeah, actually, no. It's that liquidity could also be transplanted. I have no idea. Yeah, that could also be like liquidity that's not transplanted into PYRESWAP. Now, if you guys aren't aware, we have been like since Q1 of this year, since Q1. Since Q1 24, yeah. Our devs have been building a lost property contract. This is true. This is 100% true. This is 100% true. We will, in fact, this lost property contract exists completely for the purpose of returning the transplanted liquidity to the wallets that it comes from. But the fact of the matter is that this is a claim contract. We're not doing an airdrop for this, because the fact of the matter is that some of these people are never going to come back, to be clear. Does that make sense? Now, that doesn't mean that I feel wholly entitled to just do whatever I want with their money. But if you're also aware of this, we have another version of the PYRESWAP factory in the roadmap. So the reason we're not airdropping this version of the LP, like back to the wallets, is because for the liquidity that remains unclaimed perpetually, we will end up transplanting it again into liquidity with different fee structures. So again, for those of you who know, we have a 0.1, 0.4, 0.7, and 1.0. We're going to have that 4-tier fee structure in the future. We will again transplant this liquidity, the liquidity that remains unclaimed, and then bring it right back to the lost property contract. Does that make sense? This is, again, I'm being as transparent as possible with why and how I made these decisions. Yep. I also in front of the internal troop organization, whenever it comes time to do one of these things, I go over it for weeks, because it always seems like a bizarre move. Yeah, like it just seems that like it just seems that there's not a real clear precedent about the right way and wrong way to go about and do it. But all we can do is align to our highest principle. Now, for those of you who might be aware, the Senior Circus is an organization that exists in the technical for the purpose of banking. This is an exotic banking syndicate. Yes, and we build dApps. Since we're bankers, when you bank with, like, name any bank. Yeah. Who do you guys bank with? I have no idea. Any bank that you guys use, when you guys deposit money into that bank, like, they take that money and they leverage it. Like, they take your money and they lend it out to other people. Or they take that money and they invest it. They do things with money. They do that with people who are using their ATM card every single day. Like, people who are using their bank account every single day, that money is still being lent out, leveraged, positioned by the bank they're depositing with. We legitimately did this with money that 99% of people, like, they haven't like done anything with in a year. I think that a lot of people who held this liquidity, they actually feel, and of course my heart goes out to them. I don't like even talking about how they feel. I think that they feel so defeated about how their investment performed that they're just like ignoring Web3. Like they're just avoiding looking at it. Does that make sense? And they avoid looking at it for a week, and then that week becomes 2 weeks, and it becomes a month, and it becomes 3 months, 6 months, a year, and they just don't ever think about it. Maybe one day when they finally feel, perhaps when they finally feel a reason to go look up any pieces of money they have left lying around, they will come return. But again, less than 10 people emerge in our Discords that have done this. I believe that we also have announcements, or I believe that it was at least planned in our aesthetic overhauls of the Tomb Fork websites. It's at least planned that we have this message written on the farm interface. They're like, hey, if you have money here, like, you need to claim it over here. So we'll have the lost property contract interface right there on the farm page, or if not, linked to on the farm page, and that will provide the user base a clear path to reacquiring their original funds. Yeah, that is the A to Z of the situation. The liquidity that got transplanted, I think for a good fraction of it, not all of it, but the deeper pools that had the PEG token and the share token in it specifically, this liquidity is not commingled with the house wallet. So the 8372 wallet that is in the documentation, that money has nothing to do with this liquidity. Like, that is two different things. Sometimes it's been used as a sometimes it might have been used like in the interim to send gas money to the contracts like the first time around, but the money, like the liquidity and how it's held, it's not commingled. I don't treat it like it's my money. Does that make sense? I treat it like it's borrowed money. And one of the things that we're doing, if you guys aren't aware, is that money got borrowed in a way that leverages our ability to repay it all with bonus and interest from us succeeding at the project. So what I mean by that is, yeah, like scenario. And by the way, it is Thankful Thursday. And I guess today I'm thankful for your understanding and your patience and support. But specifically, I'm thankful for this opportunity to continue to demonstrate how transparent and ethical that I'm always trying to be. This decision is just so uncomfortable because it just comes at the crux of pragmatism with principle. Yeah, and it's just never comfortable. But yeah, like I continue to do these live streams. I'm fully doxxed just to continue to demonstrate my own credit and or credibility to make all these things right in the end, and then some. So this scenario that we're talking about here is like, let's say we're talking about 2 ohm phantom, and it's SPLP. Does that make sense? Sorry, let me. 2 ohm phantom LP. We'll just say it's LP, right? 2 ohm phantom LP, and let's say it's at like. Let's say at the moment where the liquidity gets borrowed from, withdrawn. Let's say we're at 0.10 here against, of course, 1.00. And for those of you who don't understand, I'm talking about TWAPs here. TWAPs. Do you guys understand me? Because let's assume that at the time 2 ohm was 1/10 of a phantom. Does that make sense? And what that means, by the way, is in that liquidity, there is really 100 against 10. Does that make sense? As an example ratio. So if I withdraw half of this, what I'm doing is I'm withdrawing 50. I should write it like this. Yeah. 100 against 10 in the ratio. I'm withdrawing 50 from here, and I'm also withdrawing 5. Does that make sense? Now, believe it or not, it's the 5 of Phantom that we borrow. We're not borrowing from 2 ohm because we're not trying to sell any. Does that make sense? Rather, what we're doing is we're taking half that liquidity, and since we are bringing these things to peg, this allows us to effectively get all these tokens to peg at a much higher valuation. Hoping that makes sense. So as we bring the price of 2 ohm up, the underlying liquidity that still remains, right, which is again 50 against 5, this slowly turns into the midpoint. Does that make sense? It slowly becomes, I don't know, 20 to 20 or something like that. Does that make sense? It'll turn into something. Let me see. This is actually 110. So that would be what? That'd be 1,000. And then what is the square of 1,000? Yeah, 30 something. Let me see. Okay. 1,000 square root. Okay, it's 31. Does that make sense? So it's actually not going to be 31. It's going to be half of that. It's going to be like 16 or something, right? So 50 to 5 then later becomes, we'll just say it's 17 against 17. Does that make sense? So the amount of, yes, Fexer, exactly. So what we're doing is we're actually shrinking the total amount of liquidity to catch more profit from the upward, from us getting to peg, from us getting to the Vibratile range. Literally that, yeah. Because this side of the money will 10x when we borrow at that range, right? We borrowed at like low points. Does that make sense? Because what this does, when this token goes up, it allows us to buy more Phantom back. Does that make sense? Because we now have so much more, we can buy more Phantom with the 2 ohm, literally selling 2 ohm for Phantom, and then deepen liquidity across the board. Does that make sense? Like, we can significantly deepen liquidity from doing this, right? It just requires us to contract liquidity in the short term. Now, believe it or not, the reason 2Share went down in value is because I withdrew liquidity. Yeah. I took 2Share liquidity and made it smaller. So the negative price impact was in fact more severe. Naturally, it was my intention to actually make 2Share go up. So the good news is that will still happen on the way back to peg. Does that make sense? So I know that the tumultuous 2Share action that happened in the last 2 weeks or whatever, I don't think anybody enjoyed that. But the good news is that 2Share will bounce back with that same fervor, with the same amount of money. Does that make sense? Like, I just happened to make 2Share more price sensitivity because of reducing its liquidity. But yeah, does that make sense, Fexer? Like, normally you'll never hear me cry about things like impermanent loss. But the fact of the matter is, Fexer, is that like I needed to come up with the money to not have to go get a job, right? Does that make sense? Hilarious as that sounds. Or like do consultant work or whatever. I don't know. But legitimately, yeah, this allows me to, again, create more future benefit for these absentee investors in the first place. Like, again, I could, there's no way to like tell these people. We literally looked at these wallets, and I think less than 10% of them had activity in 6 months. Yeah. Well, Fexer, I spend in excess of 70 hours a week working on this project. Does that make sense? Like, not all of the work I do in this project ends up bearing fruit, right? Like, for instance, the Reddit strategy, we had to suspend the Reddit strategy until we can revisit it, right? Like, certain things fail. But the 70, 80, 90 hours a week I spend working on this, I would then have to invest that time into doing something else to find more capital to like. Does that make sense? So like I had the option of like, okay, I can delay this benefit for everybody. Does that make sense? I can just, hey guys, I'm gonna stop doing the PYRESWAP show and stop talking to Discord while I go sell life insurance for 90 days and try to come up with like 40 grand. I'd probably do more than that. But anyways, I think that really my future is being a banker, and I had to treat this like a growth opportunity of doing something uncomfortable that wasn't people's best interest, even if they weren't personally consulted by it. And again, like Fexer, I just know, and like I don't like saying this, but I didn't take out all the money. I only took out half of the largest pools with the gas token. Does that make sense? And the reason I only took out half is because I'm pretty sure that more than half of this money will never get reclaimed. I would believe that 50% at most actually ends up getting claimed one day. Does that make sense? And the thing is, it was like overall, it's like a $200,000, probably $300,000 amount of capital in the farms. Like not all of it is money I want to sell either, because a lot of it is peg coin and share coin, right? Like I would rather figure out how to hold those on the climb up, right? Like not even to enrich myself, but rather to help me pay back the people that I borrowed from, you know, like autocratically. Yeah. Yeah. This is an incredibly like nuanced and detailed thing that we've only done this in 2024, by the way. Only in 2024 that we do this. We did not do it at all in 2023. So the way that I was funding this in 2023 was from doing weirder stuff for money. Yeah, weirder stuff. Yeah, to be clear. But yeah, also borrowing money from places. So 2023, I borrowed money all over the place. 2024, I also borrowed money. I just happened to be able to borrow it from the farm contracts because people had abandoned their money there. I want every single one of them to come back, but like, I want nothing more than to show these people, you know, the new paradigm, the difference. But again, like, you know, yeah, it's a tough decision. Like, I don't like thinking about it or talking about it, and this is not the first time I've talked about it or even like told this story and explained all the ways that I feel about it. But what I'm doing is nothing dissimilar than what banks do. In the first place, what the Senorage Circus can say in its defense is that we are aware that we are in the business of banking. Other organizations in Web3 have no idea that they are in the banking business. I can't stress that enough. They've never even considered what that means. Now, does that make sense to everyone who has listened to me so far today? And I want to thank you guys for listening today. Yeah, I think that these two shows are critical because we did cancel Monday and Tuesday this week, but then also during those 4 days of absence, apparently a whole bunch of FUD and or drama like supposedly bubbled up out of people's subconscious. I mean, yeah, timing is everything. I think it's Tim Ferriss, and he says sometimes you have to learn how to focus to the point of letting small bad things happen and then just go deal with them later. Like sometimes you need to focus with so much intensity that you literally have to kind of like neglect something else that other people might think is an emergency. And I don't want anyone to feel like I don't care about their concerns. Yeah, I really do. I am still fully convinced that this project is designed with the benefit of the actual Web3 user base in mind. The features and benefits video, by the way, which we revealed a couple days ago. First of all, I watched it myself today, and it actually is a great video. Like I find myself like processing what I'm saying to myself and actually getting more bullish about my own project. I don't know if that sounds insane, but like when I hear that stuff, I'm like, yeah, actually, you know what? You're right. Yeah, that is true. And then it actually gives me inspiration to think about even more things, to be honest. I don't know if I sound insane, but I don't know if it's clear, but like we're not quitting. The sign on the wall says don't quit. Like that's don't quit, and there's guns underneath there. I don't know if I can model our conviction any more seriously. Does that make sense? Every time we come here to talk about a DeFi project, I'm within arm's reach of a neon don't quit sign and the weapon that the Secret Service uses to protect the president. By the way, expensive gun. Expensive gun. By the way, none of the money borrowed from investors was used to pay for this gun, to be clear. Yeah, I have not, yeah, just don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. This is in fact one of my business partner's firearm, and he is not exactly, yeah, he happens to just store it here on the set of the PYRESWAP show. Yeah. Exactly, Fexer. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, that's what I mean. Fexler, again, like, I told the story yesterday, but like the way exponential results happen is you identify what the linchpin missing is that kind of unlocks the whole thing. And that's why they use the word linchpin. For those of you who don't know what a linchpin is, I'm actually going to pull this up. Yeah, we absolutely are going to use the linchpin for Wikipedia. Yeah. All right, guys, you ready for your screen share on linchpin? Did you guys know we were going to cover linchpins today? Okay. A linchpin is a fastener used to prevent a wheel or other part from sliding off the axle upon which it is riding. The word is first attested, meaning axle tree pin, and securing implements onto the three-point hinge of a tractor is an example of application. Linchpins may also use an R clip, blah, blah, blah. Metaphorical use. The word linchpin, something for someone that holds the various elements of a complicated structure together. Does that make sense? It's a critical component that really brings the whole machine to life. Does that make sense? It's an often overlooked component because the linchpin, compared to every other component on a wheel and axle assembly, it's the smallest piece. I'm actually going to draw this in a diagram because I always love talking about engineering. So you have an axle here, and then you have the wheel, and I guess I'll draw this like this. And the linchpin goes across here. Does that make sense? So this is in fact a cross section where you're looking at a wheel. So this right here is the wheel. Red is the wheel. Blue is the axle. And green, by the way, is the linchpin. And by the way, this is still oversized. Yeah. Meaning, like, the linchpin's true size is again, it's something that you could, like, I mean, you can see the objects in the screen share here. Something smaller than your hand. And obviously, wheels are much larger, right? The axle, also very large. Axles tend to be the length of two horses standing shoulder to shoulder, right? So, linchpin, again, it can just feel like it's something small that you're missing. But then when you finally apply it, what you're able to do mechanically is just multiplied exponentially. I can't stress that enough. Oh, good news. We actually finished the Twitter ambassador training material. So I'm actually going to get assisted by our two Twitter managers about recruiting and training our Twitter ambassadors. And what we've done is we have effectively built a. I might announce this document, maybe not now, but maybe about a week from now. I will make this a document public. And basically speaking, what are the actual, like, key ideas that an ambassador needs to know? And I'll tell you guys what they are. There's 7 opportunities, and 7 benefits. Yet, 7 opportunities and 7 benefits. Now you might be wondering, but 5, the diagram that I saw said there was only 6 benefits. Do you guys remember this diagram? Does anybody here remember this diagram? Yeah. Has anybody ever seen a diagram that shows 6 benefits of PYRESWAP and the GPSE? Could I ask you guys to quiet down? Could I ask you guys to speak one at a time, please? Okay, so exactly. The diagram that you're familiar with shows 6 benefits. Thank you, Trigger. Thank you so much. Yes, now, believe it or not, as you guys know, we turned token decay off when we launched Genesis version 2, right? And that was in July. So what that means is there's a 7th opportunity now, which is, of course, buying and hodling the token. Does that make sense, everybody? Do you guys get it? You can now just hold the token, right? That's an opportunity. Yeah, in fact, that might be the biggest opportunity. So one of the, turning off decay gave us two advantages. One, it allowed us to effectively market this thing. It allowed us to show red candles can't kill the project, and it also allowed us to market this as a potential 100x. Does that make sense? And it allowed us also to make the project easier to understand for people. So there's really 3 advantages. So it showed that red candles don't kill it. It showed us that we're able to be a 100x, and it also showed that that it makes it easier for people to understand. Does that make sense? And because of that, everybody in crypto, everybody in Web3, to some degree, they're always willing to be a speculator. And if that's all they want to be, that's totally fine. So we want to provide that opportunity because that's what people understand most intuitively as the opportunity of crypto. So it's those 6 opportunities plus number 7, which is speculation. Now, 7 benefits. Now you might be wondering, I've never heard of these 7 benefits. Well, if you go to PYRESWAP.com, on the landing page, we actually have 10 different benefit statements that cycle right there on the landing page. And they start with, the first one is, it's the mega dApp that gives you the same powers as central bankers. It's the mega dApp that lets you monetize your wallet's transaction history, right? You guys have seen these statements? Of those 10 statements, 3 of them are kind of nebulous. One of them is like, it allows you to believe in something bigger than yourself. While that's true about the GPSE, that is also what every other project like markets as a benefit, like whether it's true or not, right? So that I don't think is unique enough for us. Another one is the potential of GameFi and DeFi, which is, while also true, I don't think it is like concrete enough to be one of our more technical benefits. And I think the 10th one, it's about being first in line to new inventions, which is also, that also is kind of speculative. It's not really technical. There's nothing to talk about there because until those inventions are invented, people aren't gonna like be taught about them in advance. Does that make sense? So the remaining 7 benefits, we basically explain what the 7 opportunities are, and then we also explain what the 7 key benefits that are unique to us are. Anybody who wants to be a Twitter ambassador for the PYRESWAP GPSE, they need to be able to explain 10 of these, meaning 10 out of the 14, in order to pass. A passing grade is 10 out of 14 with at least 4 on both sides. Does that make sense? So you can't do 7 and 3. Do you guys get what I'm saying? You need to have at least 4 on both sides. And if one of the people that's inquiring about being an ambassador, I think we have 3 of them now in the pipeline, if they can in fact explain in their own words, in their own language, like if they can explain, like, and to be clear to just because I know Trigger is listening, like it's not our job, and actually I'm not going to make this document public. Yeah, it's our, we don't necessarily want to give them the PDF and then they just like regurgitate it back to you. Does that make sense? It's more like we have to, we have to conversationally teach them all 14 one way or another, and then ask them to like rephrase it in a way that doesn't sound like they had ChatGPT rephrase it. Do you get what I'm saying? Like we have to conversationally, you know what I mean? You understand what I'm saying? Like, people will always take a shortcut, and again, your ambassadors are not going to be effective if they don't identify as an early adopter, to be clear. So it's like this PDF that was just produced earlier today, it is really about helping people think of themselves as early adopters so they can reap the various and immense benefits that this project has to offer. Anyways, do you guys have any questions? Yeah, who has any questions? We're about, 40 minutes into this. let's see. Do you guys like this time slot better? Let me ask you that. Do you guys prefer this time slot compared to the usual time slot? I think that the Thursday time slot it was the least engaging. And for those of you who don't know, it was way late in the day for me. I normally like to wake up at 2 a.m. because I feel that waking up at 2 a.m. gives you a head start to get a whole bunch of work done. In order to do the Thursday show, I basically shifted to a 4 a.m. wake up. And a 4 a.m. wake up is just like not extreme enough for me. I don't know else how to say it. Like waking up at 4 a.m., it feels like, okay, anybody can do that. Does that make sense? Like anybody like who wakes up at 4 a.m., it's like big deal, right? But when you wake up at 2 a.m., like you're really taking your obligation to produce seriously. Do you guys understand what I mean? Like you're just approaching your schedule by an extreme angle, which it kind of facilitates that you manage your time in an extreme way as well. And sometimes when it comes to achieving great things, you have to kind of impose these extreme areas of self-discipline in order to get the results you want out of yourself. I hope that makes sense to you guys. Legitimately, I hope it does. I hope that's also not the first time you guys are learning that. But a mentor of mine would be quoted to say, "The altar of greatness demands sacrifice." Do you understand what I'm saying? The altar of greatness demands sacrifice. When I thought about all the things I could do in the late evening as ways to spend my time, I realized that almost nothing that happened after 1800 in the evening was stuff that was going to help me hit the target of building PYRESWAP in the GPSE. Like none of that stuff mattered. So I realized that if I just woke up earlier, I would be able to claim more of the early morning hours for myself so that I could move the needle on what mattered the most, which is accomplishing the mission. I realized that not very many people think the way I think, but then also not very many people have the ambition to do anything that can change the world. I wish that weren't true, but it's okay. Yeah, it's okay. There's an author named James Clear, and what James Clear says, James Clear is the author of Atomic Habits, and James Clear is quoted to say, "The work that bothers you less than other people is the work you are made to do." And what he means is, the type of pain, the type of disappointment, the type of stress that you're able to tolerate for longer or in higher amounts than everybody else, that's where your zone of strength is. Do you guys understand what I'm saying? Like any arena where everybody else gives up before you, that's the arena where you're the champion. Inevitably. So, again, the wall says don't quit. The P90 behind, like right beneath it, is real. So is my message to you about my commitment to this mission. Does anybody have any questions? Does that make sense? You guys sure are chatty today. I can't wait to show you how our marketing system is going to take this product to the next level. I can't wait. I'm actually surprised by how bullish I am on what I've learned in the last few months. Because what I've learned over the last few months is just another advantage that we as an organization are going to have over everybody else in Web3. The implementation of it to be demonstrated soon. Anyways, you know, yesterday we went 15 minutes long. Today, if there is no further questions, we can go 15 minutes short. Yeah, I mean, I'll open the floor for 2, 3, or 4 minutes. Yeah. If anybody listening has a question, you can chat. You can ask on Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, I believe. Kick. You can also ask in Discord. If you have DM'd me and you're waiting for a reply, I want to say I have less than 10 people left right now. I spent a lot of time catching up on that today. I will also be making, I mean, it's not, well. Please check the way that the times changed for the rest of the shows. So I think that what we're gonna do is we're gonna upload the video from yesterday. Then I'm gonna write another announcement with that video linked in it, and I'm also gonna include the event links for the Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday show. So everybody is now updated on the way that the clocks have shifted. The Tuesday and Wednesday shows should be the exact same. Only Monday and Thursday changed. Okay, so I am hearing and seeing that there are 0 questions. So I want to thank you guys for coming to the PYRESWAP show, and I'll make another announcement today, and we'll see you guys on Monday. Have a great rest of your week.